Let's take a look at some information and charts on Tezos for Brave New Coin. So Tezos is a proof of stake coin with liquid proof of stake, a self-amending ledger. It sort of came about when the governance stuff with BTC got quite ugly. Thus far, the governance and protocol implementations changes for Tezos have been seamless and flawless. They're still catching up to ETH in terms of DeFi stuff, NFT stuff. They recently changed how the network functioned in a variety of different ways, and that's showing up on-chain stats. We'll look at that in a second. 7th upgrade Granada, that went live August 6th, around 20 days ago. And they do have DEX stuff. They have some tokens and some things, and apparently TFI, TVL on Tezos is over 100 million. I don't know where the data is coming from for this, so if somebody knows, let me know. I looked in a few places, couldn't find anything more specific than this swap platform, which based on my calculations is not 100 million by itself. This is around 25 to 30 million USD on QP, like the Mayo swap. So not quite 100 million, but it is at all-time high as far as notional value is concerned. As far as Tezos value, it's down from highs, but Tezos had a big day today, up 23% in the past 24 hours, up 58% in the past 30 days. So just like everything else, prices uplifting from the lows of May 18th. And there are liquidity mining stuff and liquidity mining incentives, reasons for people to be buying Tezos and parking at places for swap functionality on top of just staking it. And if we look at the staking stats, it looks like rewards are at 5.7%. Inflation previously is at 4.6%, so it's around 1.1% net, which isn't enough to really move the needle for most people, considering you can get like 20+% in a day on an NFT, right? So until there's some mega gains that people are FOMOing into on Tezos, which is possibly happening right now, NFTs are going to get most of the attention. I mean, 29%, whatever. I mean, these gains are unheard of in legacy world, right? Even with all that's been happening with the money printing, whatever else, 20+% in a day is insane. Currently 382 bakers, 133 delegators or stakers behind those bakers in those bakeries, I guess you'd call them. Here are the proof of stake bakers, the top list here. And this isn't an issue until it's a big issue, but currently 28% of total staking is on exchanges at a minimum. Binance was at one point on this list as well. They still are, but they've had issues with their bakery not having the correct bond, not paying out properly, and so it is what it is. But here they are, they're on this list. Coinbase, huge player on this list. They have a ton of Tezos sitting on that wallet. And all of this is a foreshadowing for ETH, because once ETH goes proof of stake, all the same stuff's going to happen. It's all going to sit on exchanges for the most part. It's just easier to use. It's frictionless. People aren't going to really be too concerned with a 25% commission, which is highway robbery on the Coinbase custody side of things, relative to Kraken at 7%. Some of these others at a more reasonable tax, basically, to bake. But there's a centralization issue. There's a conflict of interest issue, governance issues. All these things are going to arise eventually when you have centralization risks like this. Now, can users move coins elsewhere easily? Yes, but they have to do that. They have to be actively involved and care to do that and be legally able to do so. My guess is some of these people in Coinbase custody can't legally move off of Coinbase custody for regulatory reasons. They need like a third-party custodian. So unless somebody else picks up the slack who isn't Coinbase, then they have to stay there, So these are all issues. Like EOS, we're seeing this, saw this, centralization risks in Asia, centralization risks on exchanges. Nobody cares about any of this stuff until it's an issue. Meanwhile, here I am just talking about it every time because it's obvious, right? If you saw 30% of hash rate sitting on exchanges, that would be a big deal for any proof of work coin. So just food for thought, things to consider here. And it looks like the foundation has around 10 to 20% of the total as well. And they've probably come out and said what they've done with this or what they're doing with this, but Stellar got into trouble because they were getting interest on their own minting, basically. Charles Hoskinson potentially doing the same thing with ADA, right? They're these people that are founders, They deserve a reward, sure, whatever. But do they deserve millions per month in perpetuity is the question. That's for the community to decide. It's for me to talk about. So just keep that in mind. One of the issues with proof of stake, the rich just get richer, right? That's the whole idea behind it. One of the detriments, if you will. Looking at transaction counts on Tezos over the past month, absolutely skyrocketing. Part of this is swap related. Part of this is just all the nonsense insanity that's going on all over the place. But transaction counts basically at all-time high for Tezos. Average transaction value is way down, which tells me, yeah, this is probably swap related. This is all tiny transactions, which is fine. But as long as you know what it is and why it is. It's not like all of a sudden everyone's rushing to Tezos because it's some insane project, right? There's a reason that transaction counts are high and rising because of that swap platform. So this will need to normalize over the next 6 months to really understand, was this really just mining, liquidity mining incentives, or was it legitimate growth, right? Because right now it looks like it's a new paradigm, and for Tezos, it kind of is on the blockchain itself, but relative to everything else, not so much, right? Typical crypto playbook, just copy whatever works on someone else's chain, which is fine. This is all a competition at the end of the day. Active addresses also basically at all-time highs. Those are all over the place because of proof of stake stuff. You're going to get crazy wild numbers here that are harder to interpret unless you zoom out, use high averages, that sort of thing. Nevertheless, still basically at all-time highs. NVT rising from lows, but still quite low historically. And this is good. You want NVT lower or falling relative to historic levels. MVRV relative to price here, another way of looking at market cap versus price, giving you a sense of overbought, oversold. Generally, for most coins, they reach a 2x multiple, meaning the market cap can become 2 times greater than on-chain activity. For Tezos' case, it looks like it's topped out around 1.2, 1.1 historically. Currently, it's at 0.9. So this has a little room to run, but not much. So even though you're going to see people touting this on-chain activity, right? It's going to look incredibly bullish. At the end of the day, historically, unless something changes dramatically with Tezos, on-chain activity will have to pick up significantly greater than it is now if we're looking at MVRV, because if market cap just keeps going up on the same on-chain activity realized cap, then MVRV is just going to hit 1.2 immediately, and historically that's been the top. Yeah, there's not a lot of data here. Yeah, things are different now, but it's also worth considering that just because transaction counts look like they're insanity. Look at LTC and Lightbringer and what that did to that chain. Transaction counts popped off, but price, didn't go insane. So just be careful when you see stuff like that. Just food for thought, things to keep in mind. Something I'm analyzing as an analyst. Tezos, Google Trends, down from highs. Nothing super exciting here. Nothing specific going on, much like all of crypto. Moving on to technicals, 5200 EMAs, yearly pivots, VPVR volume, and RSI. Much like everything else, coming off of that triple bottom inverted head and shoulders here on Tezos USD, bouncing pretty significantly, up 22%, whatever it is today. Obviously, huge day for Tezos. Still has a pending bull cross. This probably slows down over the next week or two, and into September, I want everything crypto to just chill out, consolidate. That way we'll have some room to run in Q4. Because what you really don't want to see at the end of the day, you don't want to see this parabolic insanity, because inevitably that just makes people take profit quicker. That makes tops come quicker. That makes things become overbought quicker. And then you just get a shallower run in the bull market. It's much preferred a multi-month, multi-year, not exciting, right? Crypto hates not exciting stuff. So maybe I'll be completely wrong and this thing will be at $40 in a month. I don't know. But preferably everything just slows down. So you're going to get a bull cross on this over the next couple days. And there are levels on the way up for resistance based on yearly pivots. But at this point, probably people are watching the $10 level. And then any $10 increment after that, very similar to AVAX and Luna and everything else that's just exploding right now. On the cloud on the daily, this did have edge-to-edge entry potential. This did have a target. So the tech was all there telling you, get ready for this thing to move, regardless of fundamentals, regardless of protocol implementations, regardless of swap stuff, right? All of that, to me, is secondary to what this was already telling you ahead of time. As soon as we had this triple bottom and everything else was moving, it's inevitable that the stuff that hasn't moved starts to move. And the cloud is telling you here at 350, it's probably going to go to at least 550, which is the other end of the cloud here. And if you don't like the daily 4 signals, you can use the 12-hour, which also told you to get in around 320. You know, if you weren't playing this inverted head and shoulders, or if you weren't playing this W monster thing, it told you with a Kumo breakout to get in around 320. And it had, and continues to have, really just a giant sort of bear div with RSI on the 12-hour, not quite reaching higher highs. I mean, technically this isn't a bear div, but there's two minds, I guess, you can look at. We go to 105 on RSI, or this thing goes higher on a higher high with less RSI, and then you get a definitive bear div there. But this still looks okay, right? It's just parabolic. Tezos BTC has been in a range for 256 days now. Previously, these ranges were around 110, 140 days. So it's definitely due to move up from the range. The 15 to 200 are still bearish. It's still below this 11,000 sat level. So a big area coming up of resistance that if it can overcome, it'll form this macro W, kind of a year-long W, and probably shoot for a 2x to 20k sats, 21k, whatever the VPVR level is here. RSI getting dangerously overbought super quickly here, so I'd be careful on any higher highs with a bear div on that. And against ETH, it's finally shown some strength after putting in a multi-month bull div. Some resistance here at 0015, some resistance at 0025, and then after that it's 0065. So ETH is definitely looking softer against alts because ETH has moved up so much and everything else is sort of catching up on the fundamental side of things with swaps, NFTs, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, flavor of the month, whatever. Doesn't matter, it's working. It's worked for AVAX, it's worked for Luna, it's worked for Solana, it's going to work for Tezos. The question is whether or not that's lasting for any of these chains against ETH. It's doubtful, but as a trader, you know, you just trade what looks good. And if that isn't ETH, it isn't ETH, right? If it's NFTs, it's NFTs, whatever your bread and butter is. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management solution where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation, trades at the bottom here, all the swaps I do, lending, borrowing through the vaults, mainly on Yearn, Comp, and Aave, as well as deposits, withdrawals in this tab here. So that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.